This is my EDU 692 final, Designing Creative and Culturally Relevant Instruction, presented on August 30th, 2020. And the idea that I would like to present to bring into my classroom is an area for making and tinkering with STEAM. So there's a lot of components that I would really like to include at a minimum, such as natural materials and found and upcycled materials like bottle caps and pens that have run out of ink and different things that we can use there, and real tools for the children to use, 2D and 3D art supplies, so things like pipe cleaners and paper clips and pom-poms, along with, crayons and markers and paint. I'd like to give them some real electronics to take apart using those real tools, see how they work, and get some inspiration there. And of course, books and magazines and photos for more inspiration along with real artwork. I want to make sure that there's space for many children's work at the same time, either collaboratively or independently in the same area. And of course, space for them to save their works in progress over a period of days. So I'll be presenting this to my current school, which is Creative Beginnings Child Development Center. And I'm in the GSRP preschool classroom, which is the Great Start Readiness Program. And in my classroom, all of my students are 4-year-olds whose families make under 250% of the federal poverty guidelines. And when selecting our roster, we also give preference to the lower income, higher needs students. In our city of Mount Pleasant, Michigan, there's a really big indigenous people, Native American population, because the Isabella Indian Reservation is right there. So we have a lot of members of the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe. I'll be presenting this to my director, to the other GSRP classroom teachers, as well as to Central Michigan University and Mid-Michigan College of Education students. And so I would like to model the implementation of this making and tinkering area in my classroom, which is the oldest at our school, and then hopefully it's something that we can introduce in some capacity into the 2- and 3-year-old classrooms as well. So some of the outcomes I'd like to see are math, counting, comparing, measuring, shape recognition as they're putting things together, taking them apart, finding things that fit. For literacy, there's going to be labels on everything. There will be books and writing materials there for the children to use. Cognitive, we can see a lot of different benefits from STEAM. Using teaching strategies, goal objectives, there's attending and engaging, persistence, problem solving, flexibility, and inventiveness in their thinking. They really can be open-ended and think outside of the box. And their social emotional skills, they're going to practice sharing those materials and really learning to collaborate with the others. For their 21st century skills, again, those cognitive skills of flexibility and adaptability. Also, initiative and self-direction as they come up with their own plans to use the materials. And then this is also where leadership comes into play as they start working and collaborating in groups. They will get to practice their leadership skills. For cultural competencies, when they're working together or near other students, they're going to work on those social and cross-cultural skills. For example, I talked about the large indigenous population here in Mount Pleasant, so they might create and share traditional Native American art. For encouraging their creativity, children are going to have totally open-ended access to the materials, and they're going to be the ones that select new materials to add in. So if they have a specific project that they want to work on, I'll talk to them about what kind of materials they think they need to use and provide those for them. For problem solving, they can use those materials to solve problems. For example, if they're playing in the block area and they really would like to create a stop sign or a new vehicle to drive, they might go over to this making and tinkering area and use some bottle caps to create some wheels and build a vehicle or create a stop sign. It can also be a good area for simulation where they can use these materials to recreate real life experiences. For example, if they are really interested in robots, they might build a model robot, or if they were learning about the Native American art, they might make a dream catcher or some jewelry. I also really want to involve students in the construction of knowledge. Again, I'm going to mention the plan, do, review process, where children make their own plan, they do the activity, whether it's trying to solve a problem or a simulation, and then afterwards we review it and we talk about, hey, what went well, what didn't go well, what can we do next time? And again, students are always going to be the ones to suggest the materials and select their own projects, and I'm just there to provide guidance and provide the materials for them. For home and community resources, again, I mentioned that we have a very large Native American population where we live, so I'd like to make sure that in this area we have a lot of materials related to the Native American culture, so traditional beads, hemp cord, leather, artificial sinew for making things like dream catchers, feathers. Students also have the capacity to pose questions, solve problems, and construct theories of knowledge. So this is where I want students to come up with their own problems that they'd like to solve, come up with possible solutions, and really test their own knowledge there. Um, Through relevant instructional experiences, I would like to demonstrate different ways that we could potentially use different materials or talk about things that are related. For example, we might learn about simple machines so children can incorporate levers to create catapults or learn how to build a wheel and axle using the different materials that are in that area. And I really want students to believe in their culture influence creative potential. So that means I'm going to provide culturally relevant materials like we've talked about specifically in my classroom. I'd like to focus on some that focus on the Native American population. I'd like to add photos, books, magazines, real artwork. I might even have some local Native American artists come in and show us how to do some, beaded jewelry or different things like that. And in the same vein, I'd like to demonstrate how to deconstruct images and messages received from the media and from political, social, and cultural institutions, and maybe talk about some of those stereotypes that we've seen and what isn't accurate in what we've seen in the portrayal. And I'd like to encourage generative thought free from immediate criticism. So if a student is volunteering ideas, maybe tell me more about that. Can you explain to us how that works? And ask them some more questions and have them dig a little deeper in their thinking. This will help nurture the confidence to try. One thing that I make sure that I do in the classroom is point out my own mistakes and help ask the students for help coming up with a strategy to fix it if I make a mistake. That could be as simple as erasing a spelling mistake on the whiteboard and fixing it. No big deal, moving on. I also want to encourage the students to acknowledge and learn from their own mistakes by modeling. Every time I make a mistake, I point it out and take it in stride and we learn how to fix that. I think this also helps promote the experiment and inquiry and willingness to make mistakes. So we just also discuss the scientific method a little bit and how our hypothesis might be wrong. Our predictions might be incorrect. Our experiments might not go the way that we want them to, but how that still teaches us something every time and how those mistakes are a really important part of the learning process. I'd also like to convey an understanding of the phases in creative work. So again, that plan, do, and review process. Encouraging students to work on planning something maybe and not even building it that same day. Working on a plan, developing it, giving them a safe space for them to save their work. And if it's something that can't be saved, taking pictures of it that we can hang in that area so they can go back and look at those as references or perhaps get inspiration from other students' work that's hanging there. And also evaluating their own ideas. So especially that review part of plan, do, review, asking open-ended questions afterwards. What worked? What didn't work? What could we do differently in the future? Are there different materials that might work better? And really just engaging throughout that area in an open-ended thought and definitely reviewing how things are going. I think it's going to be an excellent area for some creativity and also for students to explore their own culture and that of their peers. And finally, I've just got some references from the Ingham Intermediate School District and those Teaching Strategies Gold observations, as well as our text and a few other cognitive and cultural articles.